There's a silent agreement, a hidden consensus, shared by thinkers who disagreed on almost everything else. From ancient Greece to the Zen masters of the East, from Stoic emperors to revolutionary existentialists, they all point to one specific human tendency, a single behavior that, if left unchecked, renders all other efforts for wisdom, virtue, or a meaningful life utterly futile. What is this universal pitfall? Moving eastward, Buddhist philosophy, though vastly different in its metaphysical framework, arrives at a strikingly similar conclusion regarding the importance of introspection. The practice of mindfulness, or sati, is, at its core, a deep and sustained examination of one's own mind, thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations, without judgment but with keen awareness. For Buddhists, the unexamined life is one lived in ignorance, avidya, driven by cravings and aversions rooted in a misunderstanding of the nature of reality and the self. This ignorance is considered the fundamental cause of suffering, dukkha. The path to liberation, therefore, involves a profound and continuous self-examination to see things as they truly are. Consider the Stoics, philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Their entire ethical system revolves around distinguishing what is within our control from what is not. This very act of discernment requires constant self-reflection, an examination of our judgments, desires, and aversions. They urged a daily review of one's actions and thoughts. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. This implies that our internal state, our peace of mind, is not determined by external events, but by our interpretation of those events. And to manage these interpretations, to choose reasoned responses over reactive emotions, one must examine one's own thought processes rigorously. Seneca, in his letters, frequently advocates for a kind of moral inventory, a nightly self-examination. "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent," he wrote, "I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This wasn't about self-flagellation, but about conscious self-improvement and adherence to virtue. So why this universal emphasis? What is so detrimental about passively accepting our mental content and societal norms? One core reason is that an unexamined life is an inauthentic life. If our beliefs, values, and desires are merely inherited or absorbed without scrutiny, they are not truly our own. We live as a reflection of others, a product of conditioning, rather than as a self-determined individual. Existentialist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus built heavily on this idea. For Sartre, humans are condemned to be free, meaning we are radically responsible for creating our own essence through our choices. To live in bad faith is to deny this freedom and responsibility, often by blaming circumstances or conforming unthinkingly to societal roles, essentially, living an unexamined life. Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, explores the absurd condition of humanity seeking meaning in a meaningless universe. Yet, he finds a path to rebellion and freedom in consciousness and revolt. This revolt begins with recognizing the absurdity, which itself requires a clear-eyed examination of one's existence and the world. To simply go through the motions, like Sisyphus before he becomes conscious of his fate, is to miss the opportunity for this defiant meaning-making. Another profound danger of the unexamined life is its susceptibility to manipulation. When we don't critically analyze the information we receive, the ideologies presented to us, or the emotional appeals made to us, we become easy targets for those who wish to control our thoughts and actions for their own ends. A populace that doesn't think for itself is a populace that can be easily led. This isn't just about grand political manipulation. It happens in subtle ways in advertising, in social media trends, even in our personal relationships. Without the habit of self-reflection, we may find ourselves adopting opinions, desires, or even identities that don't align with our deepest values, simply because they were persuasively packaged or socially reinforced. The unexamined mind is fertile ground for external influence. Imagine knowing the secret to unlocking a deeper understanding of yourself and the world, a key that most people overlook in their daily rush. This isn't about acquiring more knowledge, but about a fundamental shift in how you process what you already know and experience. It's about avoiding a trap so subtle, so deeply ingrained, that many live their entire lives within its confines, never realizing what they're missing. Furthermore, an unexamined life almost guarantees the repetition of mistakes. If we don't reflect on our past actions, decisions, and their consequences, how can we learn from them? We become trapped in cycles of behavior, wondering why we keep facing the same problems, unaware that the pattern originates within our own unscrutinized habits of thought and reaction. This lack of self-awareness also stunts personal growth. True development, whether intellectual, emotional, or spiritual, requires an honest assessment of where we are, where we want to go, and what needs to change within us to get there. Without looking inward, we remain stagnant, unaware of our own potential or the internal obstacles blocking our path. Even in traditions that emphasize community and social harmony, like Confucianism, the foundation is often self-cultivation. Confucius stressed the importance of learning, reflection, and the rectification of one's own character as prerequisites for fulfilling social roles and contributing to a harmonious society. The order of the state begins with the order of the self. Taoism, with its emphasis on living in accordance with the Tao, or the natural order, also implicitly calls for a deep self-awareness. To understand the Tao, one must first understand oneself, unlearn artificial conditionings, and return to a state of natural simplicity, pu, the uncarved block. This requires a letting go of preconceived notions, which can only happen through a kind of inner listening and observation. The Renaissance humanists, drawing inspiration from classical antiquity, championed the dignity and potential of human beings. This movement placed great value on introspection, self-discovery, and the cultivation of individual talents. Thinkers like Petrarch emphasized the inner life, exploring his own thoughts and emotions in a way that was revolutionary for his time. This, too, is a form of examining one's life. So the consensus is clear. To live without critical self-reflection is to court ignorance, inauthenticity, manipulation, and stagnation. It is to operate below our full human potential. The question then becomes, if this is so critical, why is it so common to live an unexamined life? What makes this passive mode of existence the default for so many? One reason is that self-examination can be uncomfortable. It requires us to confront our own flaws, prejudices, fears, and inconsistencies. It might mean acknowledging that cherished beliefs are unfounded, or that we have acted in ways we are not proud of. The ego often resists this kind of scrutiny, preferring the comfort of familiar illusions. Society often reinforces the unexamined life. From a young age, we are conditioned to conform, to accept established norms and values without question. Educational systems may prioritize rote memorization over critical thinking. Mass media can promote superficiality and consumerism, distracting us from deeper introspection. It takes effort to swim against this current. Furthermore, our modern lives are often characterized by constant busyness and distraction. The sheer volume of information, the demand for continuous connectivity, and the relentless pace of work can leave little time or mental space for quiet reflection. It's easier to stay on the surface, reacting to the next stimulus, than to pause and look within. There's also a fear of what we might find. What if examining our life reveals it to be less meaningful than we hoped? What if it forces us to make difficult changes? Sometimes, the known, even if unsatisfying, feels safer than the uncertainty that comes with questioning fundamental aspects of our existence. The unexamined life can be a form of self-preservation, albeit a limiting one. This video isn't just a historical survey. It's an invitation to uncover this single, pervasive error that philosophers across millennia have warned us against. By understanding it, you gain access to a perspective that can radically alter your path, your choices, and your perception of what it truly means to live. This isn't merely academic, it's profoundly practical. Yet, despite these obstacles, the call to self-examination persists throughout philosophical history because its rewards are deemed immeasurably greater than its discomforts. The first major benefit is the cultivation of wisdom, not mere knowledge, but a deeper understanding of life, human nature, and one's place in the cosmos. By examining our experiences, understanding our biases, and learning from our mistakes, we gradually develop better judgment and insight. We become less reactive and more responsive, capable of navigating life's complexities with greater clarity and composure. This is the practical wisdom that philosophers from Socrates to Seneca prized so highly. Another profound reward is the development of virtue. Many philosophical traditions link self-awareness directly to ethical behavior. When we understand our own motivations, our weaknesses, and the impact of our actions on others, we are better equipped to cultivate qualities like compassion, justice, courage, and temperance. It's hard to be good if you don't know yourself. The examined life leads to authenticity. By stripping away conditioned responses and societal expectations, we begin to uncover our true values, passions, and purpose. This allows us to live in greater alignment with our deepest self, making choices that are genuinely our own, rather than those prescribed by others. This is the path to a life of integrity. With authenticity comes a greater sense of meaning and purpose. When we live in accordance with our examined values, our actions take on significance. We are no longer just drifting through life. We are actively participating in the creation of a life that resonates with what we hold to be true and important. This intrinsic motivation is a powerful antidote to existential angst. Self-examination also fosters resilience. By understanding our own emotional patterns and cognitive biases, we become less susceptible to being overwhelmed by adversity. We can observe our reactions without being completely consumed by them, allowing us to respond to challenges with greater equanimity and resourcefulness. The Stoics, in particular, saw this as a key benefit. Furthermore, an examined life grants a profound sense of inner freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of unexamined thoughts and emotions. Freedom from societal pressures and manipulative influences. Freedom from the chains of past conditioning. This is not an external freedom, but an internal liberation that allows for genuine self-mastery. So how does one begin to examine one's life? It's not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. It can take many forms, adaptable to different personalities and lifestyles. One fundamental method is dedicated introspection, setting aside regular time for quiet contemplation, away from distractions. Journaling is a powerful tool for self-examination, as recommended by figures like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. Writing down thoughts, feelings, reflections on daily events, and self-interrogations can bring clarity and reveal patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. It's a way to have a dialogue with oneself. Engaging in meaningful dialogue with others, akin to the Socratic method, can also be profoundly revealing. Discussing important life questions with trusted friends or mentors, challenging each other's assumptions, and exploring different perspectives can sharpen our own thinking and expose blind spots. But this requires honesty and openness. We will journey through the minds of these great thinkers, not to catalog their differences, but to find this startling point of unanimity. What did Socrates, Buddha, Seneca, and Kierkegaard all see so clearly? What common human failing did they identify as the root of so much unnecessary suffering and unfulfilled potential? The answer is simpler, and yet more profound, than you might expect. The practice of mindfulness, as emphasized in Buddhism and increasingly recognized in modern psychology, is another potent form of self-examination. It involves paying attention to the present moment, our thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and surroundings, without judgment. This creates a space between stimulus and response, allowing for more conscious choices. Reading philosophy, sacred texts, and great literature can also serve as a mirror for self-reflection. These works often grapple with the same fundamental human questions we face. Engaging with them critically allows us to examine our own beliefs in light of diverse and profound insights, prompting us to consider perspectives we might never have encountered on our own. It's important to ask ourselves challenging questions regularly. What are my core values, and am I living in alignment with them? What beliefs do I hold, and what evidence supports them? What are my biases? How do my actions affect others? Am I pursuing goals that are truly my own, or am I chasing external validation? These questions can be uncomfortable, but they are essential. The call to stop living an unexamined life is not a call to morbid self-obsession or endless navel-gazing. Rather, it is a call to consciousness, to intentionality, and to a more engaged and authentic way of being in the world. It is about waking up from the slumber of passive acceptance and taking responsibility for the quality of our inner and outer lives. This single agreement among philosophers, across vast cultural and historical divides, underscores a fundamental truth about the human condition. Our inner world shapes our outer reality, and the key to transforming that inner world, and thus our experience of life, lies in the courageous and persistent act of self-examination. It is the recognition that true knowledge begins with knowing oneself, as inscribed at the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, "Know thyself." This ancient injunction remains as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago, a timeless guidepost for anyone seeking a life of substance rather than shadow. Living an examined life is not about reaching a final destination of perfect self-knowledge. It is an ongoing process, a way of navigating the world with curiosity, humility, and a commitment to growth. Each act of reflection, each questioned assumption, is a step towards greater clarity and freedom. It is a lifelong journey. The consequences of neglecting this practice are not merely philosophical abstractions. They manifest in our personal frustrations, our societal discords, and our collective inability to address complex challenges effectively. When individuals fail to examine their own contributions to problems, those problems inevitably persist and often worsen. Therefore, the imperative to stop doing this one thing, to cease living on autopilot, is more than just advice for individual flourishing. It is a prerequisite for a more conscious, compassionate, and functional human society. Every philosopher who urged introspection understood that individual transformation has ripple effects. In summary, the overwhelming consensus across philosophical traditions points to the unexamined life as a primary obstacle to wisdom, virtue, and authentic existence. From Socrates' call to know thyself, to Buddhist mindfulness, Stoic self-discipline, and existentialist authenticity, the message is consistent. Rigorous personal scrutiny is non-negotiable. Prepare to question the very foundation of your daily awareness, because the one thing we're about to explore is something most of us do every single day without a second thought. And stopping it, or rather, transforming it, is the first, crucial step towards authentic wisdom and a life lived with genuine purpose. The journey into this shared philosophical secret begins now. The choice, then, is deceptively simple: to continue in the passive acceptance of unscrutinized beliefs and conditioned responses, or to embrace the challenging, yet profoundly rewarding, path of self-examination. One leads to a life lived by default, the other to a life lived by design. A life of depth, purpose, and true human flourishing. So, as you move forward from this exploration, consider this. What is one assumption you hold about yourself or the world that you have never truly questioned? What area of your life might benefit from a more conscious, reflective gaze? The greatest philosophical journey often begins with the smallest, most honest internal inquiry. The wisdom of the ages does not offer easy answers, but it does provide powerful questions and enduring principles. And this principle, the imperative to examine one's life, stands as perhaps the most universal and urgent invitation to engage with our existence on a deeper level. Will you accept it? The one thing that these diverse philosophical traditions converge upon, the behavior they implore us to cease, is this: living an unexamined life. It is the passive acceptance of beliefs, the blind adherence to societal conditioning, and the failure to engage in critical self-reflection. It is, in essence, navigating existence on autopilot, never truly questioning why we think, feel, and act the way we do. Perhaps the most famous proponent of this idea in the West was Socrates. His pronouncement, "The unexamined life is not worth living for a human being," echoes through millennia. For Socrates, this wasn't merely a suggestion but a fundamental requirement for a life to have human dignity and value. He believed that without self-examination, we are no better than animals, driven by instinct and external pressures rather than reason and virtue. Why did Socrates place such immense importance on this? Because he saw that unexamined beliefs are often the source of our errors in judgment, our vices, and our unhappiness. We inherit assumptions from our family, our culture, our education, and we rarely pause to scrutinize whether these beliefs are true, whether they are beneficial, or whether they are even truly our own. This passive acceptance makes us vulnerable. The Socratic method itself, a process of rigorous questioning and dialogue, was designed to strip away these unexamined assumptions. It aimed to lead individuals to a state of aporia or perplexity, recognizing their own ignorance. This recognition, Socrates argued, is the very first step towards acquiring genuine knowledge and wisdom. Without questioning, there can be no true learning.